thing about the Greys is that the Greys were the ones that made the deal so that they could have
Right.
access to human DNA, the whole population.
What's in these files, right? Well, firsthand accounts from people who worked on the craft themselves.
You get to like 1940s and on, and like, why are there so many UFO crashes? Well, it's the radar thing. It's the humans figuring out how to take them down.
There were 4 ET bodies taken alive. They later died. This thing had 3 levels. The upper deck had a control panel with buttons and switches and kind of a display.
The reason why Mussolini joined the Germans is because he knew they had superior technology back in 1933. And he's like, they're going to take over the world someday. So that's like the whole story that's out there.
Big question really is like, why would they be trying to get into the craft if they were ours?
These are the ones that are at war with that military industrial complex side, who originally thought it was fun and now they're not having fun.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Metaphysical podcast. We've talked about UFO whistleblowers before who received classified information about the existence of top secret projects the military has been covering up for decades. But we haven't talked about the research from military aerospace historian Michael Schratt that honestly blew our minds. Going through tens of thousands of files with reports from top brass military personnel who gave their testimonies about downcraft, a secret retrieval program, and more, Michael Schratt was able to work directly with firsthand information. Want to hear what he brought out of the dusty file cabinets where this information was hidden away? Well, join John and me, investigative researcher Rob Counts, for a show that's out of this world.
Yeah, and if you're listening to us, watching us, listening to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or watching us on YouTube, Rumble, Ganjing World, or somewhere else, leave us a 5-star rating and review. It really, really, really helps. Make sure you like and subscribe. Just keep ringing that bell because, I don't know, they keep showing up. Don't want to miss them.
Yeah, or you get your bell gets unrung and then it needs to be rung again, which is what the bully always told me in grade school. Just kidding.
Oh,
I didn't expect Michael Schratt's information to be so mind-blowing, but when I watched Ben's interview with Michael Schratt, wow, it really blew my mind. So Michael Schratt, for you guys at home, he's a military aerospace historian who's documented cases of whistleblower testimony of UFO encounters for nearly 30 years. And as we've been saying in these last episodes, I think after David Grush and guys like Eric Hecker came out recently, I believe Mike Schratt's work is being looked at again with seriousness because all of this stuff could be true. We've got a lot of other military whistleblowers here that have come out and documented what they've experienced. And
Schratt stuff is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like so there's 2 parts on Rise TV, and I was on the edge of my seat throughout both of those. The whole interview, I'm literally on the edge of my seat because his information and the images that he has are just unbelievably cool. Like,
yeah,
if you're going to watch any interview, watch this. Watch it.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
What I loved about it too, about what Mike Schratt has done is he's really taken these whistleblower experiences and he's helped everyone understand them better by having illustrators do the work to illustrate what these guys were talking about. And, it's funny because now people will, do AI like creations on Midjourney or some of these other things. But no, he's tried to get these illustrations down to the T of what was described in the accounts to like really bring it home. And then he would show you simple drawings that were done by the experiencers. And then he would get illustrators involved and he would keep showing you better and better versions of these illustrations of what it was like to be in there with these craft.
Yeah. Like I imagine Michael Schratt, the way that he like expresses himself during the interview, like even building little dioramas of it and getting, oh yeah, choo, 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 choo. This is like, and you're like following him on this journey of building the picture that you can tell he's so interested and happy about being able to build the picture of it.
Yeah, like I mean, it's been a lot of work, and like books that he's published that I think have largely gone unnoticed.
Yeah.
And when he sits down in an interview and he goes through all of this stuff, I mean, it was boom, 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 one after another, and it was
Right.
two almost hour-long episodes with him just going through a lot of the interesting cases, and he didn't touch on everything. Here's one of the books, The Dark Files. Book 1, A Pictorial History of a Lost, Forgotten, and Obscure UFO Encounters. Michael Schratt.
Such cool stuff, man. This guy is one of the best researchers, in my opinion. And the way he presents is just perfect.
Well, and I think that's what's so great about how he's presenting things is he's a historian. And so he's presenting things how a normal historian would present them, back things up the way that they should be backed up, and just delivering the information just cleanly, the best that he can. A little bit more information about him. He began as an aviation historian, but shifted into the UFO field after opening thousands of folders and images, flight paths, etc., and then attempting 3D renderings to preserve an important part of national history. Right? Like no one else is looking at this as like actual national history, whereas he is coming from that mindset, And he's reviewed over 50,000 documented UFO cases and preserved at the CUFOS, Center for UFO Studies Archives in Chicago.
Yeah, the Pentagon, you can actually find some of these on YouTube. The Pentagon hired a production team to interview at least people who were involved in the Roswell crash. And you can find these like archived videos that they created of witnesses to them being aliens, which is very strange to me. I mean, here you have the Pentagon even documenting this and putting it into the public archives on the alien side. Strange.
Yeah, it is. What Michael Schratt's work, like what it's done, actually, a lot of people wouldn't even recognize, but his work paved the way for the National Press Club press conference that was held by Dr. Stephen Greer just recently, where Dr. Greer presented Eric Hecker, and Eric Hecker got to give his testimony about Raytheon that he was working with down in Antarctica that you guys are going to be seeing publish in some of these episodes. We had a deep dive into Antarctica after Eric Hecker came out, where we discuss a lot of really interesting things, including him. And this was the event, June 12th, 2023. It is interesting, John, like you and I were talking about this up to June, where we were like, what happened to all the whistleblowers? What happened to all of them?
Right.
They're no longer around or anything. And then boom, we get hit with two. Right after we start talking about that, we've got Eric Hecker and David Grush both coming out. Okay, so yeah, I mentioned before that Schratt went through about 50,000 cases in downtown Chicago. And he said that there were so many you couldn't even fit a razor blade between them. Like that's how many cases were just stacked. And so in these files, he was checking for drawings, sketches, illustrations, and reports, and then he would check the flight path records. He took all of that and made a drawing from it, which was either 3D rendered himself or sent to a commissioned artist to do it, to bring it up to standard. So he would see I think he would see the photos and stuff, and then he would try to make sure that he didn't lose any of the details in his own drawings before giving it to a commissioned artist. So,
right.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So his process on it was really finely detailed, trying to keep everything exactly as it was. That's really amazing. I mean, he's not like making stuff up around these things. He's just basically going off the witnesses.
Well, and you don't really get that feeling from him when you hear him talk either. I mean, I do think that needs to be taken into consideration. This guy is of sound mind. He's very organized in his thinking and in his delivery.
But that's the thing, though. So when people look at these types of photographs, they literally just think fantasy photograph. So it's really actually important to state. It's like, Well, of course, he's a historian. He's going to represent things according to the historical record of it and not go down the path of fantasizing it. Yet every single image that he has looks like it's somebody fantasizing it, right? So it's really important.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's really funny. Yeah, and so these files were basically pioneered by a guy named Leonard Stringfield, and the crash retrieval cases were under Leonard's jurisdiction, and this is where the bulk of Schratt's work basically came from. And Stringfield was the one that compiled everyone's testimonials, painstakingly compiled everyone's testimonials together, the 50,000, So this is like multiple people, working here to bring this to the light of day. What's in these files, right? Well, firsthand accounts from people who worked on the craft themselves, right? Retrievals, and they actually dealt with retrievals and dealt with the bodies being dragged out of them, or that were strewn along the countryside after the crash happened. Who knows?
Right. A lot of them were dragged out alive.
Some of these people were loading and unloading cargo into shipping containers and brought them to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, where a lot of this stuff is going on. So many UFO sightings up there too, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Which, John, you've got to come down here so we can go up there.
No, I don't want to go there. No way do I want to go to Wright-Patterson. Are you kidding me? So we were
within a healthy distance. Come on.
We were doing an earlier episode where I talked about this abduction event that happened to me. And when I saw some of the pictures of Wright-Patterson, it looked a little too familiar. So I'm not sure if I want to go there. Honestly, it's like I said before in another episode, it's like these beings are still connected in, even though they're considered adversaries. They're still connected in certain levels, certain groups of people. So you don't know what you're going to get.
Okay, so he has a bunch of high brass witnesses dealing with physical hardware, the physical hardware from this technology, the craft, whatever, what have you. Pilots might think they're chasing ET craft because they're not briefed, but it could be technology that our own government has now. So we're familiar with this, like even the Tic Tac UFO, some of these TR-3Bs, they're getting chased by friendly craft probably because they're not at the classification level where they can know about that craft.
Like with the Tic Tac stuff, those videos we saw that there were gray, I think I said it before, grays operating those ship. And like the weird thing with all this stuff is that oftentimes if we do see a craft that we've never actually seen a craft exclusively that is super alien in origin that humans are flying alone, except for like the TR-3B, which is not super alien looking because it's got those like rivets and panels on it. Whenever we get the like true, I guess you could call it true UFOs, we never get humans, we get aliens. Sometimes though, we could get a combination of human and alien in the
craft together.
Yeah, in the craft together.
Like Guardians of the Galaxy style, just tag teaming up there in space.
Exactly. Yeah, especially when you get to like the Gary McKinnon, the hacker.
The guy that broke into NASA.
Right, and saw that picture of a cigar-shaped craft that was like handed down to humans, and in that craft we get a combination of humans and aliens.
He is a very interesting looking fella, and I can't tell if it's because he's from Britain or if it's because he's got something else going on. Yeah. And I don't mean that in offense to any British people. It's like every country has like a unique look that certain people have more of than others. Yeah, check this out. Seamless metal was found versus man-made craft that look like patchwork or, like you said, rivets. So they found seamless metal. He went over Stringfield's background in this interview that Ben did on Rise.tv, and He memorized the entire dictionary by the time he'd graduated high school in 1939. We're talking about Springfield right now. And he joined the military as soon as he heard about the attack on Pearl Harbor. Springfield gave a lecture
But
in
he
1970.
memorized the dictionary.
Yeah.
Just sorry.
Like that's, I don't know, but it's like he must have been winning spelling bees like they were going out of style
I
back
know.
then.
Well, I've memorized the internet. It's like
It's kind
back
of like
then
saying
you
that,
memorized
isn't
the
it?
dictionary. Now you memorize the whole internet.
No, but I do feel like 10 or 15, maybe even 20 years ago, somebody saying they memorized the dictionary would have been a lot more impressive than it is now.
I know, it's to me. It's like,
It
well,
would have been
okay.
like saying you memorized something like way more than it was, you know?
Right.
So I guess Stringfield gave a lecture in 1978 at the MUFON Symposium about UFO retrievals, and he presented a paper on crash retrievals and got pushback over it, of course. There's a lot of anonymous sources here, so they couldn't be verified at the time, which is why Stringfield got pushback. He passed away in 1994. Now, this is where it gets more interesting here, is the propulsion systems would doom the industries, which would be obsolete overnight, which makes sense. I mean, if these propulsion systems were released to the public, I mean, yeah, overnight. I mean, like our airplanes would look ridiculous. You know?
Yeah, but here's the thing. So what? Okay, so from the standpoint of the government saying, if we don't do something right now, we're going to screw up the whole climate, and we're going there right now. Like, we're falling down this hole right now. Who cares if the industries get destroyed? Who cares? What does it matter? We won't have a home to live on, according to their story. So why not bring it out? Who cares? I mean, come on.
Yeah, yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, they're basically saying, I think Stringfield and Schratt are basically claiming that these things are not being brought out. The technologies
Because
are
it
not
would
being
destroy
brought out.
industry, but it's supposedly our industry and us that are destroying the planet, and we are done now. We're done.
Well,
We got to
right.
pay
This is
taxes
what
so we can get it back in shape.
this is what's so weird about like the current political climate out there with the climate change and all of that. It's like, well, you're not bringing it out because it would destroy the industries, and then you're telling us we were destroying everything because you're using the products you're giving us.
Right.
I don't know what to do. Like that's too confusing for me. Like my brain can't really.
Just pay your carbon credit, man. It's all going to be okay. You can sleep well. They'll fix it. Buy your taxes, man. They're just going to fix it.
It's the worst.
Get on board, buddy.
Right. Stop questioning things so much. Why are you doing that metaphysical show? We've got interesting here is UFO crash retrieval at an army base north of Georgia. It's a really interesting account here.
Now, this is the first one we want to talk about here. 1942, long before Roswell.
Wow, yeah.
Think about the implications of what this means, right? We always hear about Roswell, crash retrieval and everything, but if you go back to April 20th, 1941, Cape Girardeau, Missouri, that's one they got retrieved. Battle Los Angeles, 1942, there were at least two retrieved there. So now we're at three. If we consider this case in 1942, now we're at four before Roswell that they already have. Now the body count starts getting higher. This is 1942 at a base north of Georgia. I don't know where it is, and neither did Leonard. He didn't even know, but it was somewhere north of Georgia. This thing was 15 feet in diameter, 10 feet high. There were four ET bodies taken alive. They later died. This thing had three levels. The upper deck had a control panel with buttons and switches and kind of a display. Below that was the mid deck, which had a cutout in the center so that these beings could walk in there. And on this mid deck, there were four what looked like bar stools that were parked and sat behind a wraparound window with two smaller windows flanked on either side of the main window. Now, on the bottom deck, there was an entryway hatch door. So this is Leonard Stringfield, page 319, where you can get the reference for this thing. These beings were about 5 feet tall, 90 pounds, large black eyes. So we've got oversized head, oversized eyes, slit for a mouth, minute nose, milky white skin, and emaciated body parts, hands and arms that went down below the knees. That's what we're looking at here. And this is what these witnesses are telling us.
Were they alive or were
They were alive.
Really interesting, you know? So north of Georgia, this craft, this is pre-Roswell. Pre-Roswell. I mean, I know there's been a few of them, but wow.
Yeah, you know, there's okay, so like the crashes really picked up around Roswell, and it makes sense that there would have been crashes before that because of the whole radar thing. Now, like when you get 1930s and earlier, I don't think so much. You know, there have been some reports, like I think there was an Aurora, Texas crash that maybe happened in the 1800s, late 1800s, 1890s. Someone forgot a bolt, right? Someone forgot a bolt on that ship and it just like lost a wheel. You get to like 1940s and on, and like, why are there so many UFO crashes? Well, it's the radar thing. It's the humans figuring out how to take them down.
This craft now that we just saw, and you've got a bunch of curious military personnel who want to break into this thing.
Right.
Apparently, John, according to Schratt, diamond drills didn't even make a dent on some of these craft.
Yeah, what's the stuff made out of? Crazy, right?
Engineered to be denser, harder, and like resistant to the sharpest thing on our planet.
That's crazy. Also, some of it's reported to be self-healing.
Yeah, right. And you know, you and I have been bringing up self-healing metal quite a bit, or even concrete. Like we found some evidence of self-healing concrete, like the
right.
What is it? The Colosseum even has some of this technology in there that we don't understand now, many years later, right? So yes, very, very interesting stuff.
Well, that also makes me, you know, we ran across that article the other day on the Debrief website that's talking about how scientists just came up with a self-healing metal. And I'm like, no, man, this was absolutely fed into industry, fed to the scientists.
Well, and why aren't they telling us when they've reverse engineered something? Like, just be honest about it. You probably found metal somewhere from either a previous civilization or from one of these craft. Somebody's reverse engineered it, figured out how to do it, and then they write an article as if science is so great and grand that they did it themselves.
Right. Well, humans are the end all be all, and that's like, I don't know. It's just what
we love telling ourselves that. That's for sure.
Right. Yeah.
This is crazy. That's 2000. This was the healing stone that they kind of unraveled recently, where you can see 2,000 years old on the left and 20 years old on the right, which is totally rotted. Yeah, and so here's that article: self-healing metal discovery opens door for giant tech leap. And this was on earth.com if you want to check out that article about self-healing metal. We pulled this up on Edge of Wonder a couple weeks ago, or a week ago, or something like that. Yeah. Okay, so, you know, Schratt's kind of asked here whether or not, or he's at least discussing what he thinks about these people. You know, does he think they're lying? And he says, I don't think that all these guys are lying because they say the same thing. I keep getting these reports from these military witnesses of not only diamond-tipped drill bits, but torches and lasers trying to get into these crafts. There was one point where he said that they shot a laser at this thing and it bounced, and then it destroyed a bunch of the, you know, the warehouse or that whatever, that the hangar that they were in.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, someone's going to take their eye out if they don't stop this nonsense. You're not going to get in.
Well, and I think it's a lot more than an eye, John. I think like if Tucker Carlson's information is true, that we've got some of these, you know, we've got a bunch of lawsuits going on right now for people that have been hurt or killed by some of these UFO craft. Well, there's got to be a lot that we haven't even heard about in history. I mean, think about all of the damage that's occurred.
Oh, I know. Can you imagine? I mean, look, how many has Schratt cataloged? Hundreds.
Yeah.
What was it?
And he's gone through 50,000 of these files.
50,000 of the files. Sorry. I mean, it's like, wow. I mean, think about how many they've actually gotten. And so that is, now you got to wonder, out of that percentage, how many have they actually been able to get into? Now, it's probably a lot less than that.
Well, so what he was saying in the interview is really interesting, and you guys definitely should go check this interview out if you haven't. Like, there's so many more stories than we're bringing up here. They were doing anything and everything possible to figure out how to get into these things, and I think eventually they even used liquid nitrogen, like dipped the entire thing into liquid nitrogen, took it out, and it got, like, of course it's nitrogen, right? So things got more frail, and then they were able to get in some cases, not in all of them. Big question really is, like, why would they be trying to get into the craft if they were ours? So there's a lot of people out there listening to this that are like, well, these are our crafts, we were developing them or whatever. Well, why would they be trying to get into these or break into these like he's claiming, like so many of these whistleblowers have claimed? Why are all these people dying from getting close to UFOs if they're our own? Like, wouldn't humans make something safe enough to get close to it? They have to fly in them.
I don't understand here, like the whole, Pentagon releasing Tic Tac videos and whatnot, because here you are presenting something about a very high technology, and then raising the question of we don't know what this is, and then pull back on the alien question and go, oh, no evidence of aliens, but we don't know what this is. You are literally just stoking the fires of aliens. I mean, come on.
Well, okay,
you literally are.
Yeah, I agree with you. First of all, I agree with you. However, when we're talking about for lack of a better way to say it, the mother lode of disclosure and technologies and all of that stuff, the Tic Tac UFO video was a very conveniently organized release to keep the information only going so far, where you've got you've got only you've got a mountain of information, and you're showing them the tip of a tiny iceberg and just letting people talk about that instead of all of this other stuff, right? So to me, that actually really makes sense. Like, why show people that? Well, it's because it's either that or people start talking about some of these other things, like Mike Schratt's 50,000 files, or who knows what else,
Yeah, right. Little smoke screen there.
Pretty interesting story here. There was a 6-year-old whose electrician father worked at the base at Wright Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. So this is Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio. During a lunch break, when he was visiting, this is the little boy, I assume, a janitor offered the kid a soda. And as he's getting the soda, a door opened and he got a quick peek inside. He saw 2 tractor trailer trucks with various odd debris covered in tarps. There was a disc-shaped craft with triangular landing gear, 3 ET bodies lying on the ground, 20 feet in diameter. So these things are 20 feet in diameter, 2 raised surfaces around the outside of the craft. The boy saw the bodies in 1946. And here are the 3D renderings. Actually, we've got some 3D renderings of exactly what it looked like in that interview on Rise. So you can actually see those 3D renderings there. That's crazy. Look at that.
Yeah.
How would you get that there with those trucks? Like you they covered them up with those tarps, and then they flew them, or sorry, they drove them all the way up to Ohio. This is why Ohio is so weird, everybody.
Yeah. We've looked at a lot of crashes with remote viewing, and I can say that thematically it's kind of all the same. From Roswell, Kecksburg has some like really weird aspect to it though as well. Whatever UFO crash it is, even back to Mussolini and that crash, and actually that was the 1930s, I think. That happened before World War II. I did an episode on Rise TV where it's called Crashes of the Visitors. And I go down this path of I didn't even really talk about Roswell, which is the most well-known crash, because not only have other remote viewers covered it extensively, and we found the same thing that they've found, it's also kind of boring, right? It's also kind of boring after a while. While it may be amazing to some people, there's actually not a whole ton of information that you're going to get out of it that's any different than what the witnesses have already described, right? Well, yeah, it crashed. yeah, this really truly happened, according to data. Some of them are interesting, but most of them are just kind of like, okay, yeah, it was just another UFO crash. They got the bodies, they got the craft. It's going to happen again because they are taking them down with a radar type of pulse. It's a little bit more sophisticated now, and it's more directed. So we look at weirder stuff. Right? It's like, okay,
Yeah.
so what about the ones where a scientist walks into a ship and he starts puking everywhere because there's a dimensional anomaly in it, and outside it looked like it was 100 feet long. You go inside, it's like 3 football fields.
Right.
I mean, that's the kind of stuff that's actually interesting.
That's interesting, though. Yeah, that he got that sick. I mean, maybe it was, most of that those mechanics are in your ear, in your eardrums, in your head. So if those get out of whack, you could start throwing up right away. I mean, this is what happens to people on ships and airplanes and stuff over time. Is
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's like a weird thing. I mean, we've seen this in other projects that where there's alien type technology around. Sometimes it's like it feels like you are, when you're viewing this stuff, like moving. You can tell when you're moving through a dimensional space. What you're viewing is the viewing through going through a dimensional change in space. So if a being is coming from a higher dimensional realm, has more dimensions in it, and coming into ours, it's as though like they're trying to squeeze their head through a mayonnaise jar or into a mayonnaise jar. Like if you can imagine trying to squeeze your head into a mayonnaise jar, that's a good metaphor for what happens to higher dimensional beings when they come into this realm. And it's a discombobulating thing. And going into a different or higher dimensional realm from here, it opens up into a bigger space, much, much bigger space than what we perceive in our 3D reality. And it messes with the brain because the brain can't handle it.
Oh, that's interesting. Just like it's kind of like when you're in a VR headset or whatever, and you're still, but everything in the VR headset is moving like you're moving through a building. Your body gets thrown for a huge loop.
Right.
You're like, everything in you is like, what? Like you feel like you're moving or something, and you're not, and your body is like freaking out.
Right.
Anyway, you guys, this Michael Schratt interview. There's more stories in the Rise TV interview with Michael Schratt. Definitely recommend you go check it out, and you'll be supporting John and my work. So some of the stories you'll get on that interview are things like a retrieval on the edge of Mexico, worked on both by the U.S. and Mexican personnel. So there was competition between countries and collaboration as well. Very interesting. An egg-shaped craft with a mysterious sphere inside. Craft that had experienced internal implosions, which sounds like that Titanic thing that happened, or the Titan thing that happened, which is weird. I mean, if you think about it, like water and space, Okay, so close encounters style ships with windows all around it. So those close encounter ships like this one. Bodies being recovered, air hangars that still exist today, so large that they have their own weather inside. That is crazy. That's crazy. And then classified materials exposed for the first time by Schratt's source, Leonard Stringfield, and so much more on those interviews. So definitely go check those out, you guys.
Right.
But now we got to get into what John and his team remote viewed here regarding all of this stuff with Mike Schratt. And the first thing we're going to hit, I think, is Mussolini. So
yeah, the Mussolini thing was kind of interesting.
Yeah. So before you get into this, tell everyone what Schratt's claims were about Mussolini, just to remind everyone.
So I think it was in the 1930s, before World War II had begun. Mussolini and Italy was on good terms with the Vatican. And so this actually comes through the Vatican. The Vatican had apparently told the U.S. later on, when they became a bit more suspect of Mussolini and Italy for siding with Germany. But this is before they sided with Germany. So they had found a crashed ship. I think witnesses to the crash as well. And they went to the site, and they had found what they claimed was a UFO. Actually, when they took it, they didn't know what it was, and they thought it was probably mostly terrestrial origin. But the story is that Mussolini had 3 of these creatures like sitting in his office with him that they'd recovered from the crash.
Just
right?
chilling there, rotting.
Just chilling there. And the stories are that they were like sort of large, four-headed, blonde, Nordic type aliens.
Oh, really?
That could be a little bit of propaganda-ish stuff. I don't know for sure. We didn't see necessarily what they were when we looked at this. But what we did see was that the craft was of like, it was the shape of a wing, but with a central, it wasn't an airplane, but it could be misconstrued as like a jet airplane, the way it was shaped. It was more of a wing, a giant wing, than anything else. That's what it looked like. That's what our data has described. This particular ship, what it looks like it was, what it looks like it was for, though, was for put there, crashed there in a sense for giving some technology away. And it wasn't anything that was super duper exotic. It was something that humans at that time could understand. So what it is literally, now I don't know what the technology is. It's probably something to do with jet engines. But what I think that this craft ultimately did was not necessarily anti-gravity. There could have been some aspects. And I think that it was basically left for them in this show kind of situation, because we don't get anything like it was shot down or anything like that. There was nothing like that going on. Literally like crash landed, but as somewhat like we get the word gift showing up in the sessions. Italians had developed the jet engine earlier than others.
That's true.
So my guess is that this thing had to do with that specifically. It was some type of jet engine. Now, some people think that it was Germany that crashed there with their experiments in jet engines back in 1933, but no, it was nothing like that we saw. But that would solve solve the issue, right? As far as like, and then the reason why Mussolini joined the Germans is because he knew they had superior technology back in 1933. And he's like, they're going to take over the world someday. So that's like the whole story that's out there. We don't necessarily get that, though.
Very interesting. So the Mussolini thing is legit. Did you see whether or not he had these aliens in his office or anything?
No, we didn't see. I don't think that's true. I don't necessarily think that's true. They could have passed through there at one point, but I don't think he was like, smoking cigars with them or anything. Dead aliens.
Which would make for a better story, to be honest.
It would.
Yeah.
So the Vatican told the United States about this later on, and the United States came in and confiscated it. What we find, like across the board with UFO crashes, is that they are pretty much all real. They're pretty much all real events.
Yeah, like 90 to 98% of them, right?
Right. Because there's more around it than just one person having a UFO experience. In order for a UFO crash to make it into the public arena, you've got witnesses saw a UFO days before or during that night. There was stuff flying in the sky. Someone heard a loud crash. There were military people everywhere. So, and then you have the witness on the ground. I saw aliens in body bags, right? So with the UFO crashes, they are mostly all legitimate. They're mostly all legitimate. Now, some of these could be like a TR-3B crashing. It could be, some of these could be that, and the Americans or someone else experimenting with this technology. But when you have the aliens showing up in witness accounts, I mean, they're real. They're real. They're true. Most of the time, it's the gray style aliens.
Yeah, they're the ones that seem to be after the genetics more than anyone else.
Right. And so here's the other thing too. It's like, okay, so you get into the gray thing, and the whole thing about the grays is that the grays were the ones that made the deal so that they could have
Right.
access to human DNA, the whole population. And some people estimate 70 to 80% of people, Americans specifically, have been abducted, right? And most don't even know. Literally, like some researchers estimate, I think it's probably around 80% personally.
But that sounds
Some
like crazy talk. Do you think that that's true?
Okay, so here's the way that it can be done.
Right.
With the technology that we know Montauk has that came out of these craft, like we know they came out of these craft, they are able to go to that in-between place and move into aspects of time, backward or forward. And we saw this with the experiments that they were doing at Montauk, and we know that Montauk got it from them. Like you would think, God, it's impossible to abduct that many people. I mean, how long is the night, right? Because they do it at night. It's like there's no time. But when you have access to that other dimensional space where you can shift
The
back
upside
in
down.
time, the upside down,
The left, right, over.
right, right. That is shifting back in time over and over to accomplish the goal that they want. And the whole thing was to be testing to find out who has genetic markers in order to utilize them, right? That's the estimation, like that some researchers make. I think 70%. I place it probably higher than that, though. I know.
Oh, really? You
Because
really think that?
yeah,
Yeah,
I do. I
well,
really think
Americans
that.
specifically because of this deal.
Americans specifically, looking at that specifically. Using remote viewing to try to understand it. You have to use some wonky methods to try to understand that, but I do think that it is probably around 80%.
I'd like to remember if I have been to see, whether or not I got any of them, their necks around,
Right.
around their neck.
Did I fight any of them? I did.
Yeah.
I fought them. I broke some necks.
Yeah, I busted some skulls while I was up there.
Right.
They spat me out real quick. I had not ever really thought of that. I just thought it was like maybe like 3%, 5%, was still a lot of people, but 80% is wow.
That's what I think. I mean, people are going to go, that guy's insane. Absolutely insane. But I think it's absolutely totally possible for them to be able to do it and have it all happen in one day.
Well, and I think a lot of people, don't understand how these creatures can use technology. It's beyond what we can understand, right? So some of the things that we take for granted, they may be using to do these things and to abduct us or whatever it is. And it may not even be a full abduction. It may just be a tracking of and some simultaneous, like,
An interaction on some level. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, it's like one of these things. Well, like, what if it's the specific type of technology like that we're using? We've got portals in our homes everywhere. I mean,
right.
The Wi-Fi, the TVs, the video games, whatever it is, So it is interesting when you start looking at things a little bit differently, that there could be some ways that these things are getting tracked, But yeah, we've got a couple of other things here, like the Malmstrom Air Force Base, and you already kind of went over Roswell. So
yeah, like Roswell, it's like, yeah, okay, so what?
Right.
So what? Like this stuff happens, and it happens frequently, especially with the advent of really using radar and them figuring out how to take them down. And that's why there are so many stories that are able to be dug up about these crashes, which are real. And like I said, mostly it's the gray type aliens, but sometimes you find others that are here for other reasons. Some of these guys are here for just getting materials, source materials, not so interested in humans. But hey, you know what? They didn't know. They came into the airspace, they got pulsed with the radar, and they're screwed. Like
Right.
they're marooned, basically,
Yeah.
And then they go into this, if they're still alive, like they go into this, system within the Black Project government programs. There are contractors who work with remote viewing mostly on the telepathic side, to figure out who's doing what, where they come from, and what they want with us and what they want with this place. Like remote viewing is used for all of this stuff now. It's used in all of these programs that deal with alien species. Because how else are you going to communicate with them as well? You need to develop good telepaths in order to be able to communicate with these things. And we have had leaks around that stuff too. So this is really like important stuff, extremely important. The fact that it's put out to the conspiracy fringes where people talking about it are just crazy, have no idea what this stuff means. It's huge. It's so huge. So these crashes, yes, they are real. Over and over, they do happen. Various types of beings are being killed and then kept, studied. And if they make contact with where they came from, whomever they came from, they will contact that group. When you get to Malmstrom and what happened there in 1967, the Air Force Base in Montana, I think you had like 10 Minuteman missiles which are nuclear tipped missiles with 800 kiloton nuke on each. They had an incident in 1967 where there were these, and it happened over a couple of nights. There were these lights that were moving around in the sky very fast. And, like flies over old food, like we were talking about the last one. It's like these things were moving around fast. And then all of a sudden, the missiles were shut down. So all the power to the missiles stopped, completely shut down, which is something that can't happen. Like it's an impossibility unless somebody flipped a switch there at the base.
And these are the things that Grush and some of these other people are bringing up, where these UFOs seem to be attracted to nuclear technology, that they're doing something. Maybe some of these races are shutting this stuff down, just like you said.
So when we remote view that, what it is, so it's like a red object in the sky flying around the base, and these 10 missiles are disabled. When we look at that to understand, what we have is that these are the adversaries. These are the ones that are at war with that military industrial complex side, who originally thought it was fun and now they're not having fun. This, we were talking about that in the last episode, where they are showing what they can do. And my guess also is that at a certain point, nuclear missiles or some nuclear event happened with humans trying to attack them with nuclear missiles. And so this shutdown event, was part of the war that's been going on for quite a while. And as humans began to separate more and more from them, it just created more adversity between the two groups and fighting. In fact, we saw this.
Yeah, we often think that it's like wars between humans are going on here, but like it's like there's so much. This is opening up discussion for so much more. I mean,
we are involved in a war with these beings. We are, absolutely. Yeah.
Don't you think we should know that? Shouldn't people here know that there's danger out there and that we need to?
But what are you going to do? You just sound like a nut. Are you going to go to your local PTA meeting? I'm going to tell everybody about it at my kid's school
and talk about it. Yeah. We've got to do something about these blasted aliens.
Right.
Yeah, but like, our family members could be in danger. Our families could be in danger. Our homes could be in danger. So shouldn't we know, like, why aren't they telling us? I mean, obviously we don't want people to go scared and run into the streets, pulling their hair out or something. But it just seems that we're in a war.
This could have to do with non-combatants versus combatants, where it's like the focus will only be, maybe they take this role. Look, from my perspective, it is the biggest wrong that you could commit to kill, if you're a combatant in war, to kill innocents. If you have two people that are fighting each other and they're both combatants, I think, I mean, still not good, but I think that there is a degree of difference between, and they may understand this, between killing just innocent humans versus killing those who are fighting against them, right? And I think that might be something that is understood, right? It could be something that's universal.
I mean, hopefully, but if they've abducted 80% of the human race, I'm not sure if the morals are there,
Right, exactly. Well, I mean, that literally is to understand the genetics and try to find these very unique genetic markers within people in order to, and you would think that, maybe the idea of the abduction literally just has to do with some type of quick scan on people. I don't know if it's literally abduction. It could be literally because I do think that there is technology that can scan DNA in general, like an energetic marker in humans. So, it could be something like that, quickly, easily.
Yeah, and I mean, or they're dragging, small 4-year-old boys into a cave and asking them to poop on, some type of material. Just like a piece of paper, just like that Mount Shasta episode that we did, where we were talking about the robot grandma. That was a very, very interesting story. If you guys haven't seen those episodes, you should totally go back and watch. But yeah, so very interesting conversation we have going on here. And there's just one other thing that I kind of wanted to discuss here, which was I think this conversation around kind of the difference of dimensional space occurring.
Right.
Yeah.
So there are these places where not just ships, where there's like a shift to a dimensional space. And those places we can find out in nature at times, and locations that we've remote viewed where it's the same kind of thing that scientist ran into when he went on the ship. That is, and I think this is a Grush story, where the ship appeared to be about 100 feet long, but you go inside, it's like 3 football fields. And that was like very discombobulating. We find these types of situations also in certain places in nature where you have a lot of paranormal phenomena occur. So you have kind of like the same genre of thing going on, whether it's the same thing causing it or not. I don't know. I mean, perhaps there's like a UFO like cloaked nearby or cloaked there. Who the heck knows why this is happening at times? So we see that. We also see that with some of these purported alien bases. Like if somebody says, well, there's a secret government base over there that where they're involved with aliens, we'll find these anomalies in those places. And these anomalies are actually used to kind of set up these sort of traps. We call them viewer traps or mouse traps, where you get caught in this weird dimensional space when you're remote viewing it, so that you're in this sort of like fractally kaleidoscope thing that goes on and on and on. So you don't, and that happens to every viewer.
I said it sounds like a Doctor Strange movie.
It does sound like a Doctor Strange movie, where you're remote viewing it and you get kind of caught in this, and you can't break through to the other side, because like what we have run into in the past, if none of that kind of thing is set up, we've run into aliens that will notice us. They will take notice of us. So there is some kind of dimensional construct as well with the technology they have. They can set up as sort of this like psychic trap to trap psychics within. So you can't see what's behind it. So that's another aspect of these. And some of these crafts, some of these UFO that we run into, they have the same thing. Like it's like, especially when we get to the higher dimensional stuff. Like if you've ever seen Peter Maxwell Slattery's videos, some of his videos, he's got a lot of videos of UFOs. The ones that we have that are sparkling and they're sort of like got these colors going through them. When we remote view those are the same kind of thing that's going on, except it's a higher dimensional thing, where all these other beings are just beyond in another dimension. And this ship is used somewhat as like a lens, where they're looking, it's like sticking their head through a window, right? But they exist back in another dimension.
Dude, that's some creepy, like Doctor Strange Dormammu stuff or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. So you've actually seen that some of those craft are in fact like bizarre technology for watchers,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dude, I have to ask you a question. When you saw that, were you like, what the heck, dude? Like, what was your reaction upon discovering that?
Okay, so like you're looking at it and it's like this thing, it's this anomaly, it's light, it's a craft, but then when you're viewing it, it's like other beings come forth to step into this zone in order to see you back. And they can go back to wherever they came from, or they can like hang out there and look. And yeah, during a session, you're remote viewing and you're not judging, but you are going, wow, this is a little bit weird.
Yeah.
And this is definitely a dimensional construct of another dimension that's meeting our dimension. And in a sense, it's a craft at the same time. It's very weird. It's like it's something that humans definitely can't wrap their mind around, but it's like a lens type of craft where different beings can come in. Now, are they fully here or fully there? They're fully there. It's like sticking your head into a bubble window so you can look around, right?
Yeah, much safer, especially if the physics here don't line up with wherever they're coming from, or
Right.
the conditions of Earth aren't quite right for their bodies. It's easier for them to send a craft and they could look through it instead, maybe, right?
Right.
That's crazy. A little bit unsettling too. It's like bad enough we have modern technology that's tracking us all this time, and now we've got to look up at the sky and see if there's a disc there with an eye in it.
Exactly.
Yeah, wow. Very interesting stuff. Well, you guys, this to some extent, at least for now, wraps up a few of these UFO episodes that John and I wanted to bring you on the journey of, because there's so much going on right now with all of this whistleblowing and all of this information that is readily available. Metaphysical, this podcast, this is the place to talk about this stuff. So what did you guys think? Please leave comments below wherever you are, whether you be on YouTube, Rise TV, Spotify, whatever. Also, please think about supporting all of our work by subscribing to Rise.tv and watching the Michael Schratt interview with Ben. Easy to find on there, and it's only $9.99 a month to subscribe, and we get just so much content there that you get in return. And John, thanks so much for being with us and for going through all of this. And yeah, definitely, you guys let us know what you think, and we hope you thought this episode was as out of this world as we did. See you next time.